University of Pennsylvania student who co-founded a campus chapter of Koreans for Decolonization. She is a co-coordinator of the Philadelphia chapter of Korea Peace Now Grassroots Network. She was an inaugural Feminist Korea Peace Fellow at Women Cross the DMZ in 2021. Our speaker has been an active member in the campus divestment movement and the Philadelphia Alliance Against Imperialism. She is studying philosophy, politics, economics, and psychology at UPenn with a minor in music. Wow. She is concurrently pursuing a master's degree in educational policy at Penn. Our featured speaker is a supporter of the Gaza anti-war Free Palestine movement, and she envisions a future of peace and liberation from colonialism for all the people of our planet. Please give a warm welcome to Hannah Lee.
Grad student at Penn studying various things. Today I'll be speaking on the state of campus organizing, the Korea and Palestine movements, and reflections that I personally had in bringing my various involvements together and the power of radical solidarity. The university is a radicalizing and mobilizing space for many students. Divestment becomes a focus because we experience how exploitative our universities are, often feeling like piggy banks, while understanding our right to its spaces and functions as a source of its economic sustainability. We want our tuition to go towards the flourishing of education and the well-being of not only us, but the community our schools often impede on. Campus organizing allows for a focus on a variety of issues, including fossil fuels and climate change, university-funded private police forces, student unions, gentrification, and global occupations. Organizing on a campus has its fair share of challenges. Externally, there's always active repression from administration that leads to student arrests, disciplinary charges, and diploma withholdings, which leave permanent marks as we enter the workforce. This past May, students, many of them my friends, were racially profiled by Penn private police and prevented from taking part in the very graduation they were promised they could attend. Donor and alumni pressure spur on this administrative pressure, and in the age of doxing, student safety has become a huge issue. I know many students who have had their personal addresses and information leaked publicly, leading to incredibly unsafe situations, while the school does nothing to protect its students. But internally, we also have to balance our safety and how much we value our post-grad and professional aspirations while organizing. Centering the community we are part of, while actively harming by giving the university its funds, can also be a challenge, as many of us are only in the area for 4 years. There's the issue of burnout and balancing all else that comes with being a student, and then there's the question of how to keep organizing alive in our lives outside of the university space. Penn was one of the initial spaces of tense action surrounding Palestine even before October 7th. Externally organized, the Palestine Rights Literature Festival had been scheduled to take place on our campus in late September. Faced with accusations of anti-Semitism, the administration released statements condemning this. Seeing this as not enough action, donors pulled out hundreds of millions of dollars in funding in the following month, and the festival was canceled by administration. Following October 7th, our president was called to testify at a congressional hearing on campus anti-Semitism, where she gave responses on protecting freedom of speech and stating that anti-Semitism on campus had been controlled and not the hostile majority like perceived by some. This led to more backlash, and the president board chair resigned in mid-December, days after the hearing. Finally, we had a student encampment starting in April, which was dismantled by Penn's private police force in early May with over 30 arrests. Some of our Israeli students are trained Israeli occupation forces. Our police are trained by the IOF. Ghost Robotics, a robotics and AI company in Philadelphia which produces robot dogs, used in armed warfare not only in Palestine recently, but also the U.S.-Mexico border, is housed within a Penn-owned building for research and engineering. This leads into my next section. This company was acquired by a South Korean arms manufacturer this summer with a 60% control stake at $240 million. My most recent endeavors have been showing solidarity with the Palestine movement as someone who is active in the Korea movement and exploring the interconnectedness of our histories within a framework of peace and liberation. Korean no occupation. I'll share an excerpt from a statement from Mildethor, an anti-imperialist organization centering Korea on Korea's solidarity with Palestine. The quote states, "As anti-imperialist Koreans, we stand unequivocally with Palestine, its people, and its armed resistance against the Zionist occupation. Since 1948, when over 750,000 Palestinians were forcibly expelled from their ancestral lands, the Palestinian people have resisted annexations, bombings, segregation, displacement, and massacres. This is neither a two-sided conflict nor a war. It is an occupation and a genocide." As Koreans whose homeland is divided, we know that imperialism is our common enemy. Knowing our liberation from Japanese colonialism and the beginning of independent socialist construction in Korea, the U.S. split our country into and indiscriminately bombed and killed our people. There is a reason the Nakba and the division of Korea both happened in 1948, backed by the same imperialist interests. Contextualizing the global nature of history shows us how Palestine and Korea both tell stories of anti-colonialism, the struggle for self-determination, and fight for people's democracy. Around the same time as 1948's Nakba, the seeds for the Korean War were sown, and in 1950 the Korean War burst into reality. Just as the British signed the Balfour Declaration in 1917 to establish a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, two American colonels took 30 minutes to look at a map of the Korean Peninsula and drew the 38th parallel division, a decision that has still divided our nation. Both nations face a divided reality with no free travel across the border for Palestinians and Koreans and no right to return. The blocking of aid to Gaza by America is reminiscent of economic sanctions and travel bans placed by the U.S. upon North Korea. Both nations and people have faced dehumanizing propaganda. Furthermore, both are places that are U.S. issues and geographically strategic sites for the U.S. hegemony. Israel and South Korea have served as places for U.S. military presence in the Middle East and East Asia, continuing Cold War-era aggression targeting the Middle East and China. Despite most Americans wanting an end to the Palestinian genocide, the U.S. government supports Israel and supplies its arms. The U.S. empire, all in all, is not a democracy. The Korean War is still one of the most destructive conflicts to exist in modern times. The civilian death toll is proportionally one of the highest, and over 4 million lives were claimed over the course of 3 years of absolute destruction and relentless bombing of the North by the U.S. Air Force. However, no official peace treaty or end-of-war declaration has ever been established, leaving these two Koreas in a state of constant war today. The lack of resolution has had tremendous impact even on the kind of politics accepted in South Korea, as Cold War national security laws established in 1948 are still in effect today and provide grounds for squashing even marginally progressive political movements from gaining legitimacy. As we have seen with escalations in NATO's focus on the Pacific region and emphasis on the U.S., South Korea, Japan trilateral alliance, North and South Korea have served as an outlet for U.S. aggression and militarism in the Pacific region. South Korea hosts the largest U.S. military base abroad, yet is supposed to believe that this is purely for our protection and safety, regardless of the U.S.'s explicit tensions with China. Increasingly aggressive joint military exercises between the U.S. and South Korea is reflected in the exercises held by the U.S. and Philippines in the West Philippine Sea. This and all escalations in the Pacific show us that the modern Cold War is dangerously poised to become hot. It is hot already, and that the facade of peace has been an oppressive warmongering tool serving the U.S.'s goal of instability and expansion. With this understanding, APN Philly has mobilized to speak on 10 campuses about the shared anti-colonial and anti-imperial struggle, and showed up in solidarity at Palestine rallies, joining hands with other anti-imperialist organizations such as Anakba and Philly. So as Koreans stand in solidarity with Palestine, we are also preparing for similar events to occur in East Asia in the near future. With significant escalations from all sides regarding China, Taiwan, and North and South Korea, a war in one region would spark conflict in another. The U.S. military presence in East Asia is significant and growing in preparation of these conflicts under the guise of moral upstanding and containment. As the pro-Palestine movement has globalized and slowly normalized the anti-imperialist struggle, I have begun to consider challenges that may be unique to East Asia in similarly contextualizing our history and struggle. The public perception regarding China, but especially North Korea, significantly conflates the government with the people. These are evil entities and totalitarian states with brainwashed citizens. Where the media and public separate the people from the state, there is belief of saviorism, of refugees, and the West's moral obligation to save the brainwashed citizens from their oppressive regimes. I believed for a while that a part of the success in the globalization of the Palestine movement has been the public's ability to separate the people from the state. That they might see Hamas as terrorists, but don't associate them with the Palestinian people, which is ironic given a majority of Palestinians support a Hamas government. They see the Palestinian people as oppressed by the regime that is Israel, and this has been the result of on-the-ground reporting and images and videos of the harm and killings that have been incurred. However, as I watched the terrorist attacks unfold in Lebanon, once again injuring and killing civilians and children, and as I watch people continue to argue that this is Israel's right, I wonder if my beliefs were correct. I'm watching as the UN passes another non-binding agreement and the US oppose it. I'm watching as people say that labeling what is happening in Lebanon as terrorism is wrong. I'm watching as our university campuses keep up fences and continue to punish students who will be remembered in a few years as the only ones who were brave enough to say what is on the majority of the world's mind. I'm watching and the world is all watching. When a war occurs in the Pacific, how inhumanely will my relatives and families have to suffer before they are seen as a pitiful life that should have been saved? In redefining peace within these contexts and my personal reflection, I thought deeply about some texts including these. Chestnut St in The Wretched of the Earth that they realize at last that change does not mean reform, that change does not mean improvement. Angela Davis stated that radical simply means grasping things at the roots, and that the idea of freedom is inspiring, but what does it mean? If you are free in a political sense but have no food, what is that? The freedom to starve? I think for me, peace is now a state of radical liberation for all, not simply a state of non-conflict. Disruption of the oppressive status quo is then a necessity. In reflecting on the work I have done and seen, disruption is broad and encompassing. It can be placing pressure on institutions, radical community building and sharing love, accessible political education and critical discussions, and mobilizations, whether in the form of rallies or the vigil today. Taking such actions to create a broad and global movement for peace inspires the work I do and the work that many I know do. And I am filled with hope and driven and excited for continuing to take part in this movement. So thank you all today.
Could we give it up for Hannah